So I thought I'd take some time to do a little review of the morning of the second day of the fourth convening of the Four Winds. And so the first thing I did was I went over to the state park. I went on top of the bluffs and just spent some time looking at where the Niobrara River and the Missouri River converge. And so I'm up there, and I don't have great pictures because I have my camera. I have my phone. But to see these huge bodies of water meandering all over the place, bridges in both directions, the islands, the silt, the animals, the hearing the birds. It was just a beautiful way to start the day. And then afterwards, I got lost. But I got out of the park and got over to the Ponca tribal grounds before anything started. So I get there, and they had the morning prayers. And I'm telling you, this guy, first of all, his prayer was so loud, forceful, and powerful because it was really emotional for these two branches of the same people to finally come together that have been separated from the Trail of Tears. And so maybe individuals had gone back and forth, but never such a large number. And to have the ancestors on the same grounds higher up looking down was just very powerful. So they had their prayers and song, and the song is in all four directions, and the man singing it with his wife, and it was just a good way to say, hey, this is a really important event. Then we had a really good breakfast, and I gotta have a little help here. We had our first session, and the first session was on false solutions and indigenous just transitions, and they start talking about all these things that colonial, extractive, industrial corporations do, and governments, to look green, but in fact don't do anything to change anything. And so this included carbon capture, which they say doesn't really stop anything. It just you pay a group off to agree to not cut down any trees that they weren't going to cut down anyway, but they're still extracting. It just allows them to keep doing that. And so they said that's just a scam. And they talked about greenwashing and blue washing. Just this hyper vocabulary to give the impression that something's really happening when it's not. Okay, and these carbon NCOs, these organizations that look like they're standalone and not part of corporations, to work with indigenous groups to relinquish rights or cooperate in the scheme. And they, in fact, do nothing more than pull out the materials that should really just stay in the earth. So that was pretty interesting. And then the second talk of the morning that I went to was on manipulation of the sacred. And this was the idea that the earth is our mother, and the earth is a living thing. And if you're a systems person, you get that. Or if you're someone who looks at the human body and realizes all the different cells and bacteria and viruses and all the different things that live inside us, independent of our consciousness, and we act as if we're just this, okay? And we're not a multiplicity of things. You take that and you expand it to Mother Earth, and you see that extracting is really inflicting on Mother Earth. And so with that, they were talking about a carbon pipeline, and the idea that you're going to plant this carbon in one place, and you're going to expect it to stay in one place. And that's just not going to happen. And so it's the answer is to not pull up the carbon in the first place, not disrupt it in the first place. And then the other thing is they talked about man camps. And man camps are when you have large numbers of men who work for an extended period of time. Think oil rigs or lumber forestry, cutting down huge areas of the Amazon. That you have these camps where men stay while they're doing this work. And in the process, the numbers of abused women in those areas really skyrocket. And so that's important because I tied it together for the second half of the day. So the first half was interesting, powerful, and the speakers, and you'll hear them, I recorded them, were articulate and had lots of data and examples. So it was a good first morning. So that's it. Take care. Bye.
Nebraska. Yesterday was a good day. I think everybody walked away from here with some good feelings, but more than that, like some real motivation and some new ideas. And, we're gathering knowledge and ready to show up and show out for our relatives when they need it. Today we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that are working around rights of nature whenever we're in these other spaces, and like at the United Nations permanent forums on indigenous issues, or traveling into other global spaces with our allies and relatives. There's some things that we all face, we all hear about, we all talk about. There's things that we need, and part of what it is information. People need information to be real aware of what's going on around, them and their situations that are there. Because I talked a little bit yesterday about the co-opting of language and how there are movements out there that are taking our words that are our good words that we have good intentions with, and they're putting those labels onto their really bad things that they want to do. This is about a manipulation of the sacred. We're going to talk about carbon credits, greenwashing, blue washing, and NGOs.
Good morning, everybody. First of all, I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful for the sacred water that sits in front of us, and for this wind that blows, that shares the breath of all things, and for that Mother Earth that sustains us, for the Father Sky that lights this morning, giving us this opportunity for another day together. And I have this information that is shared with me that belongs to one of my relatives here, Bonnie Deere, and about the fire he was talking this morning. I want to ask him to take a moment and share with us before we go on with this panel.
Moro. Bonnet Joseph Korundo, Nokosa Girun, Henyumi Jimalakto Idundo, Omagakta Idishi Gaido. My name is Bonnie Deere. I'm Bear Clan, and I'm glad to be here, and I shake all of y'all's hands. Casey had asked me to yesterday. Some of us from Oklahoma, like the Seminoles and some of the Muskogee people, we didn't attend the corn planting ceremony that you guys had, and it was not out of disrespect or anything, but our people, we have a green corn ceremony that takes place in late June and July, and we can't participate or mess with corn until our ceremony's over with. So because of that, we stayed back, and it was no disrespect or anything like that, so I wanted you guys to know that. She also wanted me to talk about the fire that we have going on. We're going to keep that fire. I told that young man up there to keep wood on the fire until about noon, because Casey said something about they was going to close up maybe around 3 o'clock. But one of the things that we do back home in the roundhouse when we had our elders circle, and we had people from all over the different nations, people like Oren Lines, Leon Shenandoah, Thomas Banyanka, and that's just to name a few that used to come there. A lot of prayers go into these fires that we build, and we keep the fire lit so that the prayers that are offered to the fire will go up. And so when people left, they would get some of the ashes from the fire and take it home with them, because then they carry the prayers of the people that had left it there. They carry it with them back home with them. So that was the reason why we started letting the fire go down, and it's not a roaring blaze by the end of the meeting here. So it'll be going down here in a little bit, and after that, there'll be some coals there. And like in the roundhouse, what we do is we put cedar on there to smoke and smudge the house off, and that's our way. And we are visitors here in the Ponca Nation, and out of respect to them, that's just some people. That's why we have tobacco and cedar and sage and things like that over there. But one of the things that I wanted to add into is that our people, we was always told that in the beginning of time, when our people come to be, there was 4 herbs that was given to us, and to always use those herbs with you for ceremonies, for prayer, for whatever it is that you need to take care of yourself, whether it's taking care of your house or your family. And those 4 herbs was the red root, spicewood, tobacco, and cedar. As long as you have one of those with you, you'll still be good to go to wherever it is that you need to go. And so here at this place, we have 2 of those herbs here, and it's the tobacco and cedar that is being used here. So when we talk about brothers and sisters of different nations, we are not too far different from each other. We all use those things, tobacco mostly. But I thought I'd let you guys know about the fire going down. It's not out of disrespect. It's like pretty soon we'll all be gone from here, going back home and things like that. The fire will be going back home too. So that is the reason behind all that. So I hope I've covered everything. So Mado for listening.
Thank you. We're always grateful for new knowledge and old knowledge being shared, and appreciate those. And at the same way, I rarely even mention this because I don't think about it, but I take water from these mixed waters before they're offered back to the earth at the end of the ceremony. I take a little bit home for our next sweat lodge or whatever ceremony we're going to have that has this water that's combined here. So if you still have a very small container, you're welcome to do that before we take the water back to the creek that never freezes over here for your next ceremonies. I really want to, again, acknowledge my elder brother and thank him for being who he is in our lives, and also in the life of the American Indian movement as a Wounded Knee veteran who was there from the beginning to the end, and who continues to serve us every day with his strength and with his prayers, and with just being who he is in our family. So I ask you to stand up, brother, and allow us just to say thank you for what you've done for the American Indian movement, for the Native peoples. Really makes me want to go on a tear and tell you about his name and what it means, and it's our great-grandfather and all of those things. So I'll try to contain myself a little bit here. It's so good to see all the good faces here and all the good intentions and all the manner in which we've been called together. It's reminiscent of those moments in those early AIM days, when we were young, because we were. And she was a baby. One of the stories I've often told about when we were having a prayer meeting for my 3 brothers that were in Wounded Knee at that time in rural. We were outside of Cushing at Lily Morgan's place. I don't know if you all are Beaver Morgan and them. They had that place outside of town where in a big garage, just families eating together, and our babies were playing outside. She was 2, and the snipers started shooting at our children there. The deputized people from the state of Oklahoma, because that's the life that we've lived there. You know, we're under attack all the time, and it's that way all across Turtle Island and maybe around the world for indigenous peoples. So when we gather in these spiritual ways, when we gather in the ways of policy making, like my little relative over here mentioned, when we gather in the ways of sharing these informations, it's much bigger, and the energy goes out further than any of us can really imagine. You know, Native people, it feels like quantum physics are catching up with us right now, because we understand that energy and the energy of prayer and gathering together gives us more than we can even imagine into the future, and that we've gathered from the past. When we talk about these solutions for us, like the rights of nature, of exerting sovereignty, about making those policies, about gathering our energies around common goals, we also have to talk about the things that might be stumbling blocks that are in the way out there. And for us, we're talking in terms of carbon trading. We're talking in terms of commodification of the sacred, the way that the non-indigenous people, the ways that this, what they call the dominant society, the pitiful things that they are, that they find a way to even buy and sell the wind itself, the breath of humanity. And they want to call it carbon capture and carbon sequestration and carbon trading. It's a whole market that they've made up so that they can continue to pollute. And there are other forms that Shannon and I will be talking about right now. I'm bringing back to you this particular one because in Ponca territory, the very air itself is so polluted that we have untold amounts of cancers and autoimmune diseases within our family structures. And it's eroding our culture in such a way that 3 out of 4 of our Hadushka, our warrior societies, don't exist anymore because those places that they existed, including here, this was the gray blanket Hadushka at one time up here in this territory, but down south where the same one came into being when we were forcibly removed no longer exists because of the pollution there has polluted the land, the air, the earth, the water. And when we were at the United Nations, I believe it was in 2007, I was speaking to a group of Aboriginal people from Australia who are in similar situations with the amount of poverty, and they're trying to make a way for their people. They made a deal with ConocoPhillips 66, which is where we live. That's who's there. And the deal was that they would be supplied $1 million, which in a small tribe is so enormous, can feed so many, can house some folks, can lift up your people. And we empathize with that. And all they had to do in return was to plant these trees in the desert where they lived. Well, they think, and foolish white people are offering us the money to do this and it's going to help us. But the white folks don't know that those trees don't belong in the desert here. And in their good intentions, they planted those trees because theoretically in 30 years those trees would produce X amount of oxygen. What they had entered into was a carbon scheme. What they had entered into innocently to help their people was something that was going to kill us in White Eagle. Because then ConocoPhillips will say, okay, we have 30 acres of trees in Australia growing, and it's going to produce X amount of oxygen in so many years. And so theoretically, we can pollute that much more here. That's what a carbon credit is. And I was talking to them about this, and I said, you know, you just put a bullet in the gun to shoot my people. That's how direct these effects are. And they also are not considering, these people who sell the carbon credits, the fact that the wind blows in their territory too. So that same kind of pollution that's happening over White Eagle right now is going to blow into Texas and up here to Nebraska, and eventually the polar vibes will change, and what we're dealing with right now is that increased jet stream because of the polar melting. Everything is connected. We cannot separate one from the other. We cannot buy and sell the air. Our people know that.
So, this morning as I was eating the breakfast and toast and all of these things, that a lot of things that I don't eat at home, because I'm trying to watch my carbohydrates. And there's a thing on a lot of packaging that says, you know, 0 net carbs. You know, and I'm like, oh, great. Does that mean I can eat the whole box? And I've been thinking about net zero and words that sound really good in the advertising. Carbon neutral, net zero, biodiversity credits, carbon offsets, you know, the red forest programs. We're just going to count some trees and all of this stuff, and it's confusing to people. All of this is it's just some good packaging on my granola box is really what it is. It's selling me on oh, it's not really that bad. It's actually pretty good, and I think the more words they throw at us, because every time I get a new word and I have to look it up, I have to look at what is that exactly, because maybe it isn't something that's so bad, or maybe it's not bad right now, but it's going to be bad pretty soon, because that's another thing. Everything sounds really good at the beginning, but the fact is that Mother Earth is not a resource, and anytime we put a price tag on what nature does for humans, that's how we're treating Mother Earth, and we're really shifting the dynamic, making us not a part of the system of life, but owners of it. But if that's not bad enough, every time we're fooled and lured into this conversation about these false solutions, whether it's carbon markets or trading or carbon neutral, net zero, all of these things, we are buying into a system that allows fossil fuel companies or universities sometimes or cities to buy these credits that allow them to say, look, we're carbon neutral. We're good. We bought these magical credits, and somehow something's changing somewhere. But really what that means is it's giving them permission to offset their bad deeds by buying carbon credits. Those bad deeds still happen. And they happen in real places, in real time. And when we travel around the world and somebody is setting up a project like that, or with Casey or someone, they stand up and they say, that's killing my people. It's killing my people. That carbon neutral financialization is killing my people, because it's just a shell game. It's just moving things around. We're not actually changing anything. What we need to be is free, carbon free. We need to eliminate
those things. We have to actually make the change. We all know that.
But if there was not a carbon market, there would not be the same amount of global warming, of earth warming. So that's why we're talking about this false solution. There would be no market if we weren't all participating in some form of carbon trading. Here in Nebraska right now, one of the things that they really have to be careful of, we have to be careful of, is the fact that there's going to be a carbon pipeline coming through here. And when you were talking about IEN, by the way, one of the most brilliant things, I remember being in a session in California prior to the Paris Agreement, and it was Dallas Goldtooth was sitting there among everyone else, and they were trying to come up with the next catchphrase to go to Paris with, and talking about fossil fuels. What are we going to do? You know, we have to have a fossil fuel phase out. No doubt about it. Everybody has to get on board with that. And what are we going to say? And Dallas is just sitting there. You know Dallas, right? From Reservation Dogs, too, right? Yeah, anyway, he said, how about keep it in the ground? Yeah, Dallas. That was it. That became everybody's understanding. If we keep fossil fuel in the ground, that's all part of Mother Earth's way of being. It's going to make a difference for all of us. And to go back to the carbon market and the manner in which, have any of you been to see the buffalo here? This incredible, yeah, those relatives of ours that are here ready to be marketed as carbon sinks, the same as the whales. There's even some indigenous peoples in the Pacific now who are looking at whales as a carbon savior, a carbon market, so that they can put a value on the whale's ability to absorb X amount of carbon. And so when there are tribes like this put together a buffalo program with a humane way of understanding how to have that relationship in a good way, then it's creating a healing. When we have tribes or indigenous peoples or just human beings looking at things like whales as a way to have a carbon market, then that's what we're calling false solutions.
My name is Benishi Albert. I'm Yuchin Anishinaabe. I'm from Oklahoma. And yeah, I helped found IEN way back in the day when I was still a teenager. And then most recently I was one of the co-directors for the Climate Justice Alliance. And I took a year-long break for a minute. And what I want to say about that, especially for the young people, find your pace. Don't burn yourself out. We need long-haul organizers, right? We didn't get to this place overnight, and we're not going to fix it overnight. So pace yourself. Take the rest you need. Come back in swinging, right? So I have a hard time with the term false solutions, because I feel like having solutions in there reaffirms that it's a solution, right? So I call them carbon scams,